Hey everyone, welcome to CoveredCall ETF Investing, your central hub for deep CoveredCall ETF data. In today's video, we're going to be going into the CoveredCall ETF ALLSTAR tracker, a Google Sheet I created to keep tabs on the general health of the CoveredCall ETF landscape across Canada and the US. But this video specifically will be looking at the differences between two very popular fund managers, Yieldmax ETFs and Defiance ETFs. Keep in mind, come July, all the data that you see currently is static information, but come July, it's all going to be live. The performance data is going to be live. Yields will be changing on a regular basis. Prices will be changing on a regular basis. So it'll be the start of making more info live. So if you like what you see and you like the idea of that, head to the description below. There'll be a link to check out the tracker for yourself or the very first comment that you see. So with that being said, let's get into the video. And we're going to look at the differences between Defiance and Yieldmax and see where these, because they are advertised as very high yielding, and we'll just kind of chat about sustainability, where the opportunities are with these kinds of funds, and what is sort of the best way to maybe play Yieldmax and these Defiance type funds, the very high yielding funds. Maybe if you're newer or maybe you've been in the stock market a while and you like income investing and you like the idea of these high yielding funds, there's probably some things we should get you guys to maybe try to understand about the funds themselves. You know, are they sustainable for the long term? Me personally, these kinds of funds do not suit my goals with the kind of yields that they have. But for some of you out there, they might. So let's actually go through some of that. But first off, we'll look at sort of what are the highest yielders out there. We see that in the top, basically the top five, we got almost a split between Defiance and Yieldmax with Coiny, right? So crypto-based, we got a diversified fund which is the Russell 2000 small cap companies. Alti, which is diversified across the most volatile stocks out there, which leads to this very outsized yield. We got Square. And what else do we have here? QQQY, the NASDAQ 100, also yielding a mighty 68% as well. Now, I mean, if I was to say invest in it, now again, it's hard to say because these aren't associated with my goals, but I'll try to give, if I were to invest in these funds, maybe without sort of maybe a goal in mind, it's just kind of like what to look out for. But I guess first and foremost, I kind of just want to see what funds have been historically, even if it's not been very long, what funds have historically, just on a price performance level, have actually been doing, okay. Some of these funds haven't been around that long, so we can see with like Alti, we can see with like they do have price performance. Now, the higher the yield with something is, the more it's going to drag down on price. That's just the trade-off that you're going to make. The better yield you're going to get, the price performance isn't going to perform as well. Now, I've said it before, going into July, I'm going to be adding a total return column for 1 month, 6 month, year to date, 1 year. That's one thing that's been lacking on the tracker. And with CoveredCall ETFs and with so many coming out that are so new, we want to know what the total return is, right? Which you can see here in the 3-year column or right here, 3-year column, the 5-year column. These are total return columns, which include price performance and the dividends all included in one place. So that's something to look forward to with the July tracker. Now, as we head down the list, we see much more red than we see green. But again, if the total return tab was added in here, there would be, I think you would have a much different perspective on just exactly how these funds perform. But again, that's to come. If you're looking for opportunities with these funds, I'd be more willing to say maybe try something kind of in the mid-range, something that's been around for 6 months but has been kind of proving to stay a little bit afloat even with a higher yield. Let's take maybe Coiny might actually be a good example. Its price performance is down in 6 months by 2%. Crypto's been on naturally quite the run in that period of time, but its distribution or its yield has just been astronomical in that regard. So even if crypto takes a bit of a hit, you can still reinvest that difference that you're getting every month from those premiums that are generated, and just reinvest them back into Coiny. As far as the more diversified funds, Defiance is, I would say, they go for more of the diversified type funds. So SPYT right here hasn't been around that long, but in the past month up 2.5%. What's another diversified? JEPY, more S&P 500 based. Over the past year to date it's been down 9% performance wise, but it's offset by such a massive 55% yield to boot. Now, one thing to think about with these funds is that they mimic the price. You don't actually get exposure to the underlying ETFs. They mimic the price of the underlying ETF. So meaning that if you were to get a diversified fund like JEPY, what it'll do is it's simply just going to try to mimic the price of whatever the underlying is, or even the single stock. This might be a better example. Let's say like Netflix, it holds one stock. It gives you exposure to the price performance of Netflix, but not Netflix itself. It's a little bit different in that regard, which means the way it does it is a little bit more complex. If you get into the prospectus, it probably has about 3 or 4 different strategies included with a lot of the Yieldmax stuff. They're very all similar in regards to the single stock ETFs. So there is a little bit more to understand about them, but that's the main thing, is that when you invest in these things, you don't actually get Netflix. You just get the exposure to the price of Netflix. I'm more of I like to actually hold the underlying. So for me, that's just a guardrail I've put in place. Like, I don't want a fund to try to mimic anything. I don't want that whatsoever. And then as far as distribution increases are concerned between Yieldmax and Defiance, here, you know what we'll do? We'll just filter it by the difference. We'll filter it by Defiance up in one space and then Yieldmax in the other. Now with these distributions, they bounce around on a regular basis. I invest in a lot of Canadian funds. I'm a Canadian, so the way CoveredCall is up here, the trend seems to be much more stable than it is on the American side of things. But you can see wild swings in distributions, right? You can get minus 50%. You could be up 30%. But ultimately, what is the lifetime change? And as long as that lifetime change is increasing, you're paying attention to that, then there could be something strategic in there, even if it bounces around on a monthly basis. Hey, if the lifetime change is continually going up, it's kind of like it's kind of like a bar graph that goes up, goes down a little bit, then back up, down a little bit, right? So that pretty much, as far as the difference between Defiance and Yieldmax funds goes. If you're looking for something that's a little more diversified, I think Defiance is a little bit more centered around the S&P 500, the Nasdaq 100, the Russell 2000. It's more index based. whereas Yieldmax is more focused on, single stock ETFs. They got Yieldmax, which you can invest in, which is an all-in-one. It has basically all of these funds all in one place. You invest in ALTI, which just is the most volatile stocks out there, and to generate as much maximum premium as possible. I think YMAG, in my opinion, this fund, I think, will go outdated really quickly. I think, it's supposed to be a play on the Magnificent Seven, but those 7 funds won't necessarily always be the most magnificent. So I think YMAG is more of a trend for now than anything, but it could be wrong, but I'm just gonna say that I think YMAG will probably at some point in time it'll have a sunset date sooner than later. But all these other funds, I think, could very well could have plenty of longevity. They could. What's to say that they won't? But again, at that point, they're all just single stock. Maybe OERK, right? It's the play on, Kathy Wood's ARK fund. So there's it replicates whatever that fund's doing. So that's really the only other, outside of these other, ALTI, YMAX, YMAG, the only other kind of all-in-one fund that it's got going on, at least for Yieldmax. And that's pretty much it for performance and what you can maybe expect between the two funds, or what the difference is between these two funds. So again, if you want everything all in one place, maybe Defiance might be a good option there. If you want to pick and choose, if you want to play the next 2 months with a particular stock in mind, then yeah, Yieldmax probably might be the better way to go if you want income along the way in regards to that. Hopefully you enjoyed that small snippet from the CoveredCall ETF ALLSTAR tracker. If you want, there is a 2.5-hour video full of all of June's content here in 2024 that you can check out for yourself. And just a reminder, if you want to have a look at the ALLSTAR tracker, in the description below or the very first comment that you see, there'll be a link to my Patreon to pick that up for yourself. So as always, if you like what you see, hit all the buttons of the like and subscribe variety, and I'll see you all in the next video.